Masterclass with Rachel Barton Pine. I'm Jim Sedefin, the director of the Academy, and we have three wonderful Academy students who will play for her today. One of the things that we try to teach all of our students in the Academy is to be as inquisitive as they can possibly be. And I can think of no better example of that than Rachel, who not only has learned the entire standard violin repertoire, but she also knows how to turn on a microphone. Sorry. Anyway, as I was whispering, Rachel is a wonderful example of a highly inquisitive, knowledgeable musician. She not only has learned the entire standard violin repertoire, but she's very knowledgeable about how to play Baroque music. She's an expert in the area of African American composers, and she was for many years a member of a, what do they call them? Heavy metal band? That's it. So she also has a foundation that helps young musicians. She's a wonderful example of what it means to be a great musician, a great person. We're delighted to have her here. Please welcome Rachel Barton Pine. And our first student to play for her will be El Cho, who will be playing the first movement of Lalo Symphony Español, accompanied by Milana Pavchinskaya. I'll let you know in 5 minutes and 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. All right, I guess I'll try to hold this in my hand and we'll see how that works. Okay, wonderful, wonderfully well prepared. Okay, so this rhythm, triplet duple. This is such a stereotypical rhythm associated with the music of Spain. Interestingly, it doesn't derive from Spain itself. It derives from the music of West Africans who were then brought over, enslaved in the by Spanish people in the various South American and Latin American regions, and then that music was then brought back over to Spain by the Spaniards, and cross-cultural inspiration. But the thing about this rhythm is that it's very, very important that it actually is accurate. Now, what's interesting is that for a long time, we didn't think about these things, and rubato is always king, especially for Romantic period music. And a lot of times the expression is enhanced the more that you are flexible with rhythms and add rubato. If you play strict and straight, the music is kind of dull. But in the case of a very special rhythm, by altering the rhythm with rubato, you actually diminish its impact, because then it's no longer this special triplet. And so triplet duple just becomes run pony hot dog, which is nothing special at all. And so, I'm not blaming you in the least, because in fact many of the most famous violinists of many generations record the rhythm, and their albums of this piece get it wrong. And why do they get it wrong? One, maybe they just weren't thinking about it, just played it the way they felt without thinking about the kind of ethnic underpinnings of the music. But also, probably they listened to the recordings of the previous generation and they got it wrong, and they thought, well, that's how we play this. And so how does a tradition become a tradition? Well, someone makes a mistake and then everybody copies them, and then it's a tradition. All right? So now that we know what we're talking about, we can break this mistake, especially movement 3, by the way, everybody. Everybody always plays it with a dotted rhythm. Da-dum-dum, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. All the famous violinists. And it's actually 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And so getting that rhythmic pattern into your blood is super, super important. I would even recommend doing it with scales or whatever away from your repertoire to just drill it into your system. So let's see, this is what key is this piece? D minor. So let's do and you don't have to say triplet duple. I think the words Sylvia and I came up with at one point were chocolate pizza. And we made it up out of thin air. It turns out there is such a thing as chocolate pizza. But anyways, yeah, we have strawberry shortcake. You can come up with whatever lyrics work for you. But can you play me a D minor scale with this triplet duple thing? The first note wants to be too long, and this is because this is the musical language we're used to. It's almost like we're trying to speak now with a Spanish accent, and we've never learned Spanish. So deliberately think about making the first note not as long to make sure there's time for the rest of the triplet before the next half beat hits. You can do harmonic minor if you want, whatever kind of scale feels good. Okay, so yeah, I would do a little bit of that in your practice, and then also, now that you're doing a true triplet, the duple has to feel really kind of strong and settled. So triplet duple, so the dun dun dun. So do that one more time and kind of feel the solidity of that two-note bit. so just insert that over whatever, 3-octave scale you're doing that day, and just give yourself a little bit of getting used to that. Okay, now it happens all over the place. So the first one is this gentle lyrical one. So, yeah, bum, 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 bum. And then those longer notes feel more pleading. Whatever you're bowing this there. Can you play just that bit? Right, so I don't want the rhythm now being exact. I don't want it to take away from your expression, right? So how can we be expressive and a pure triplet? Make all 3 of the notes expressive. Instead of with a wrong rhythm, go 1, 2, 3, 1, singing these notes. Yeah, much better. And let's see, there is. Okay, well, we'll find more as we go along, but yeah, throughout this whole entire concerto. Okay, oh yeah, at the very beginning. Da, 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 ya, da, 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 da. Actually, give me that one. And then that's another, this actually comes from the Arabic influence in Spain, this ya. So that's almost like a little ornament, if you can imagine some kind of Arabic sounding thing. And always kind of setting it on the beat. The yum, this kind of wrong feeling. Okay, so start from. So almost rush it. In that case, we don't want to be super strict. We want to actually squish the ornament to give it that kind of zing effect. Yeah, that's the idea. And by the way, when you get to the second movement, it has a ton of those, and it's really fun to find them all and give them the right flavor. Okay, so the most important thing overall in your playing, you've probably never heard this before, but you need more intensity, all right? So especially with this kind of music that's supposed to be so hot-blooded or something. But it's not about dynamics. Some people will think, well, when you're soloing with an orchestra, you have to be loud because you've got all those instruments and you have to carry over them, and then they just saw away the entire time, and it just sounds blah because too much loud ends up not being exciting at all. So it's good to vary your dynamics, but sometimes I felt like you got light when you got soft. So when you get softer, you need to stay intense and you need to stay projecting. Let's just start again at the beginning, and I'll stop you. Today. So that high note, which is so scary right off the bat, let's actually forget about how hard it is and think, what are you going to do with the music? This is a stupid A major arpeggio, A, E, C, 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 E, or some kind of, what do you call it when I can't remember my music theory. An open triad, that's it. Yeah, it sounds like, oh look, it's an open triad. So let's instead think about, here I am going up the fingerboard, like ta-da! Then you're supposed to, it's almost like shock and awe. Like you start off and you just go right up the fingerboard and amaze everyone in the audience. Okay, that was an ugly crunch. But anyways, but the point is you have to be more dramatic that you're going up higher. Dun, 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 yeah. And here you definitely can take a tiny bit of time instead of just dun, 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 there it is. Dun, dun, dun. da, really show us that that high note is about to happen and that here it is. All right, right where you start. Yeah, so dun, 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 dun. Don't let your note fade. Dun, 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 sustain, dun, 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 dun. Right, and then you finish it like an exclamation point. Like, whoa, wasn't that impressive? Yeah, and then get on with the next measure. Keep going. Yeah, even that can be more flamboyant. Right, not just this way, but up and down. Good. Okay, keep going. Dum, bum, bum, bum. Yeah, even there, you look very, very elegant and tasteful. Can you be a little bit more like with pizzazz? Have you ever seen a video of people doing flamenco dancing? Okay, homework assignment. Go on YouTube and find some flamenco dancing, and then see how they not only do it, but they show off that they're doing it. All right, so you have to have a sense of, hey, look, I just played this awesome run. Right? So your bow comes out like a toreador's sword. Dun, that was nice and strong, then you let the note fade. Dun, 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 dun. Keep it going. I caught a run pony. The first one was very good. All of them. Triplets in a row. So just watch out for that one. Anyway, keep going. Yeah, so you'll need to just look at the sheet music when you're practicing next time to find the triplets. Maybe even make a copy of this movement and just circle all the triplets with a red pen or use a yellow highlighter or something to make sure you don't miss any. Because I think probably now it's memorized, you're not even totally aware of where they are anymore. Okay, keep going. Okay, so here's where, yeah, you're playing so musically, but you're fading out of view. All right, so show the shape just like you are, but go from mezzo forte to forte, not all the way down to some kind of piano. Keep the core of the sound there. Stand up tall. Triple it down. Okay, so don't take too long with some of the notes because then you won't come out. Start from ya da 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 da. Yeah, so it all has to be like actually aggressive. Not like you're angry or something, but just that you're so full of intensity and you know, well, when I say anger, there's negative anger, which is not what we want in our lives, but there's also like righteous anger. Like think about injustices or something and just be like, you know, that's whatever it takes to try to get yourself to that point of feeling really almost towards, you know, like not completely violent or anything, but really, really, you know, not polite anymore. Not polite. Okay, but now we're going to have a lovely section, so go on. Okay, this is so fortissimo. Dig in. Okay, I know you can do more. That's it. Still keep it. And all those that little rhythmic thing that you can slightly squish. Yeah, that's just triple it, right there. Triple it. And it's really, really beautiful. This fits your playing. It does, or the type of playing that you're comfortable with. I know you can do the other kind, but this is really great. It's 19th century, so let a slide sneak in here in the. You can let your. Yeah, don't be afraid to let us hear some shifts, because that'll actually really help that note melt into the next one and stuff. Soprano. Yeah, oh there, yeah. 1, 1, 2, let's hear it. Yeah. Even more. Don't be afraid of it. Just a lot of times you fade it out, and sometimes it was left hand, right? So you did that 4 vibrato, like you just stuck your hand in the electrical socket or something. Can you give me that kind of a vibrato? Right, and then every up bow. That would be fantastic if you were playing a Schubert sonatina, right? But we need bite, we need edge, all right? Not gracefulness here. The other times for gracefulness, but not this section. Another big vibrato there. Right, and every note. Don't let them fluff by. And then an aggressive spiccato. Yes, if you drop on me. Drop down just enough. So you give yourself a little room, but you don't need to go down 3 dynamic gradations. Wrong note. And then singing. I don't know if maybe you have different notes in your edition. That might be 2 wrong notes there. Okay. I think we're about out of time. Do you have any questions? No? Okay. So yeah, you have to feel like you're yelling more, right? Sometimes we have to play different types of music that go against our personality. Sometimes we're kind of a naturally cynical person and we have to play music that's full of cute cheerfulness. Sometimes we're a quiet person and we have to play music which is really loud and aggressive. Sometimes we have to play music that's sad and tragic, and we're, pretty optimistic generally, or vice versa. So you have to just, think of a character, think of a story, just whatever you can do to play like you're not yourself, like you're doing this other kind of expression. And you can do it so well. You just have to remind yourself like every single measure. All right, great job. Oh, goody.
Thank you. And now we have Lauren Kim, who will play the first movement of Camille Saint-Saëns' third violin concerto. Lauren?
Okay, wonderful. Well, first of all, bravo. This is actually, other than Beethoven, I think this is probably the hardest concerto for intonation, oddly enough, even though we consider it to be, you know, overall less hard than, you know, Brahms or Paganini or this or that. But every time I return to it, it's like, oh my God, how is it so out of tune? So really, really great job with that. Okay, so first of all, when you start, I would actually have your bow down because there are four full measures, right? 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, bring your bow up. I think it's just more dramatic than if your bow is already kind of waiting, and then plays. Has anybody ever told you about not drooping when you're playing? You've heard that once or twice? Okay, well, I'm going to add to the chorus. Yeah, when you're standing tall, it looks so good. And you know, it's funny, posture means so much more than inches. I'm pretty short, and every time I would, you know, stand on stage and perform, afterwards people would meet me and they would go, "Oh, I thought you were so much taller," which I guess was a compliment, but it meant that like I had a tall, you know, stage presence because I stood so straight. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't move. I think it's great to move. It's, you know, very natural to not be stiff in your playing. So it's not so useful to tell yourself don't do X. So you want to redirect your inclination to do something and instead do a different thing. So every time you're really into the music and you want to dip down, instead try to train yourself to go up with that action so that you're still making a motion, but you're making one that's going to be more serviceable. Because, well, what do you think are the reasons that it's not as good to be constantly bending over?
You can't protect the sound.
Right, and do you know why that is? Because the F holes go, yep. What else?
It's not for intonation or leadership.
That's true, yeah. Ergonomically, your violin is in weird places and your fingerboard is pointing down and you're trying to shift up. That's not so helpful. Though you were like totally in tune anyway, so then you can say, well, I was in tune, so why not bend? But yeah, generally it's not such a good idea for that reason also. And yeah, and it just looks more confident. You know, audiences sometimes, you know, like to see someone who's moving. I mean, Heifetz stood perfectly still and was so expressive and kneeling everything. But, you know, it's nice to see people who look like they're into it and sound like they're into it. But this kind of movement actually doesn't look as confident and just, you know, on fire. So, yeah, so actually how to change a habit. When you're practicing, of course, a lot of your practicing, you're probably kind of standing still and doing things. I mean, you've obviously put in so much good work on this. But also when you're practicing performing, do kind of an in-between. So you're not like completely performing and just not thinking about detail and just letting it loose, which is also very important in your practice session, to not stop and to just, you know, be able to set everything else aside and just play. But do something in the middle, like let yourself be as if you're performing, but think about it, you know, so that you're kind of like going through the motions of performing, if you will, but noticing what those motions are. Even use a mirror if you have, you know, some mirror that in a place that you're not going to bump your bow into the side of the wall in the bathroom or something. And, you know, but don't change your posture to look in the mirror. That's the danger. People play like this, and then they're in front of the mirror, and they play like this to look at the mirror, and then what's the point? So, you know, either use your peripheral vision or put yourself in front of the mirror like this, but don't play more stiffly. You know, play with full expression, but being very aware of every motion you're making as you're playing. Okay, so just, I mean, I'm sure you're already working on this, but very important to continue. Okay, so really lots of good stuff. It's interesting, this opening, and I really appreciated that you took a lyrical approach. Some people can, you know, take, you know, almost play it like it's Lalo, which of course this is now the elegant French concerto, so it's not, right, it's not this kind of bombastic thing, but it has shape. But then the interesting thing is we have eighth note accent, and of course some people can sound like da 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 da, but I think actually da 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 to this note, to this note, to this note. So you have little bits of inner phrasing inside the long line. You were doing a great job with the long line, but I could have used more of the inner bits. So I heard nothing of the accents, and he obviously put those there for a reason. So right, can you just start right there? So each group of eighth notes is leading to the next quarter note, and the next quarter note gets a little bit of passion. Yeah, okay, it's a weird place to start. Why don't you start right at the beginning? Actually, start at the very beginning with the opening 2D. I want to see you put your bow down. Okay, so after you tune, the oboe gives you the A and you've tuned up, then you look at the conductor, you're ready to start, and you put that bow down. Down, down, down. Yeah. Suddenly I was taken out of the music and I was noticing that you were doing a really hard shift, and then I noticed that you successfully did a really hard shift, but I lost the music, okay, because you lightened up in order to do that shift. You don't need, if you were singing it, you wouldn't go da 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 da, right? Because that doesn't make sense. Da 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 da, right? So you have to do the same with your bow, regardless of what challenges your left hand has. I do underhand, but if you're doing overhand, you're actually doing the opposite of what you're doing. You should actually be sustaining that previous note and leading into the high note. Can you just give me that? Don't be afraid of us hearing the shift. This is 19th century music. We want to hear all those slurpy shifts. Yeah, so lean your index finger into the bow, get that bow hair really, really flat. Yeah, one more time. Right, and then you can give it a little bit of room to then get going. One more time from just where you come in. Da, 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 da. No, that sounds like we turned down the volume and then we turned the volume back up on the radio. Da, da, yeah, connect them. Yes. Yeah, so I would actually, you know what, I don't know what your teacher told you, but I would finish the thought. It changes to major, which could be an excuse to lighten up, but I think it's more like a triumphant end of the section, and then this is when you change your color, because the strings are doing tremolo, or the winds, I forget exactly what the orchestration is, but there's something very beautiful happening in the color here, because this is the same texture. This is just before the real impressionistic composers, but it's still very French color kind of stuff. So da 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 da, that's your thicker sound, and then this is going to be your new floaty sound. Start from maybe on the beat. Da 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 da. Beat da 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 da. Or just da 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 da. Now change. Right, and I like how, yes, and you're doing it, your inclination is correct. Here, the second one, with more of a biting accent, but you didn't quite achieve what I think you were going for. So make sure you're really connected to the string. Really grab that now. Now this stuff, really great color. Your string crosses could be more blended. Do it slowly once by yourself. Here to the D string, to the A string, and then so especially the D, and then the A, or D, A, E. Well, as you're doing every string cross, try to just blend the bow across the bridge so that we don't hear any little angular bits within. Think of how a pianist can play just a whole bunch of rippling up and down the fingerboard, and we don't get these little clunks crossing string. Yeah, that one, da 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 da. Can you round out the A to E a little bit more? Da, 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 da. Okay, yeah, now play it a little faster. Same thing, of course, with bow changes, making sure that those are completely invisible. This, so it's all one seamless thread. Yeah, I'm still hearing a little D string and then a little string bow change. So from yeah, I can actually, if I closed my ears, I could see you going this and then going that. So we want to just see. Do you ever practice those, Mr. Vamos, 2-octave scales? Did you do those way back? You're probably past them. I actually do them as my daily warm-up. They're my very favorite warm-up. And the wonderful thing about them is I actually use them a lot for blending string crosses. Sometimes we don't want to blend string crosses. Sometimes we want to be super articulate, and and we actually use the string cross to help us with our articulation. But sometimes we want to completely eliminate any sound of it. So actually, let's see, the best one. Can you give me that one? Let's just see how seamless you can make that. Are your feet a little bit too close together? Yeah. Has anybody told you that before? Okay, so yeah, if you widen your stance, then you can lean out onto your left and you're not going to fall down. 4 on a bow. 4 on a bow, 4 on a bow. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was a good one. Okay, so you can hear there's room for improvement. I mean, this is, the minuscule difference between, very good and great, right? And you're already playing it so well. But this will be a really important skill to have for so much repertoire going forward, to be able to have those just perfectly hidden string crosses. I would go back to your 2-octave scales up the fingerboard, especially higher on the fingerboard when the strings are farther away from the fingerboard. Then there's even less room for error because your overlapped fingers also have to be prepared in advance or we get moments of fuzz. But I'm sure you had other priorities back when you learned them, probably intonation and whatever. But do them really for the left and right hands, blending the string crosses. And then when you get to Brahms, for example, the second movement, here, stuff like that. Just it's so much different than a. To make it completely invisible is just heavenly. All right. Okay. So enough about that. Why don't you actually go on to your next section? Yeah, maybe not quite so rushy. Maybe a little bit too WC or something. Give it a little bit of spark. Small thing. You might want to consider doing the original slurs. I mean, it's always good to have more bow when you're trying to solo with an orchestra, but I think there's something very pretty about it, more interesting if you do the original slurs. It's almost like it starts with this gentler and then it gets more excited. If you have two bars of the same, I don't think it has as much personality. So start from here and just try it once. Now, yeah, just to experiment, because I think people, for a long time, nobody did those slurs, but now I think people are going back to the original bowing now that the nice Urtext edition is out and stuff. Okay, that was great. Going on. Da, 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 da. Yeah, okay, so the orchestra is pretty active, right? I think there's still a lot of this like angstiness in here. All the harmonies are very weird throughout this section. And then, the next one is, then the sun comes out. But all this, this is where things are still very, little bit upset. Great. And watch out for your shift. I don't want to actually hear. Okay, I mean, it's one thing to hear slides, but we don't want to go down to a low pitch and then try to replace your one with your three. Now, total legato. Yeah, so the best way to hide a shift for cleanliness is hiding in plain sight. If you have a little discontinuation of the legato, or you get a little softer right at that moment, that actually is a change in tone and draws our ear to it. So we think we're hiding it, but we're actually making it stick out. The best way is to just keep playing. Who, me? I'm not shifting. Playing. All right, so right there. Okay, great. And then you're playing so elegant. This is going to be another place where just that, you're at like 98%, but if you could get to 100% of being able to blend the both with the curve of the bridge for those string crosses, that would make it even more beautiful. So then this section, yeah, and you're doing really well. Some people just go, "Yo, da, da, da," whenever they play with passion. And you're doing a good job of having like a warm expression that's more calm, but wait, don't change it too soon. So it's still just calm, dolce espressivo, right? Sweet and expressive. Da, 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 da. Then when the harmony changes, you can bring in a little more darkness to the sound. But right there, just let it be relaxed for a few bars. Don't be in any hurry to unrelax it. All right, so right here. It's still beautiful. There you go. Now everything's fine. Dolcissimo. Yeah, so just so calm and happy, contented, really. I would do more of that B sharp. A little more something on that B sharp, a gorgeous echo. And there, let yourself linger over the bar line, the orchestra, bum, 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 ba, da, da. Don't be in a hurry to play your next note. Right on that E. Can you da, 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 can you rise up instead of bending down? You get your feet. Yeah, great. Yeah, so that's one more specific spot that could be just absolutely seamless. So it sounds like one bow, one string, nothing, just a silken line all the way from start to finish. Okay, I think we're out of time, but thank you so much. Gorgeous.
Hello? Yes. And our final performer is violinist Tristan Su, who will play the first movement of the Mendelssohn Concerto accompanied by Sung Hoon Mo.
Okay, great job. Lots of excitement in your playing. Some intonation here and there. I know it's such a long movement, but what are you doing right now because it's mostly very good. Actually, one of the sad things about playing our instruments is that the more in tune we get, the more in tune we have to be. Because, if we're kind of 80% in tune, then we're just kind of generally out of tune all the way along. But if we're really good intonation, and then we have a bad patch or a sour note, then it jumps out at the listener's ear. So if you get to 90%, then it's like more important that you get to 95 than back when you were at 80%. So it's like you're being punished for having improved. But what are you doing right now to continue to tackle this?
Intonation?
Yeah.
I try to do it slowly with like making sure every note rings, and sometimes I would do it with so if it's like an E, make sure that it rings the other strings.
Okay, I actually didn't note down any particular spot. Maybe as we go, we'll find one and do a few things. But yeah, making sure that you also do up to tempo, but only a little bit. Because sometimes it's easy enough for us to get to our notes when we're doing it in slow motion, and then as soon as we speed it up, then it's not quite there. But if we're doing it like a large stretch of things fast, then it might be hard to pinpoint exactly what's happening. So doing just little tiny bits fast, but listening specifically to all the individual notes can sometimes be a good strategy. Anyway, I'm going to tell you a few random things and then we can go back. There were two noticeable times when you significantly slowed it down and your very sensitive accompanist allowed you to do so. So actually, the job of a pianist in something like this is sometimes to not let you do things that you really shouldn't be doing instead of following you through thick and thin. But yeah, when you got to, so you were doing the, and then by the time you got to, you did like a meno mosso, and that just can't be. And then there was another spot that you really slowed down. Where was it? Da-da-da-da. I thought I wrote it down. Oh, was it this stuff? Maybe it was. Oh yeah, it was. Okay, so you had. And just like subito meno mosso. So yeah, whatever. If there are sections that, maybe that was just completely you were not aware of it, but that would never be an acceptable interpretative choice. And if you're not comfortable doing those sections up to tempo, you got to work more at them. Or if some other things were too fast, maybe then you have to make sure that you're starting off in a tempo that's going to work for you all the ways through. Okay, then yeah, even a moment of, and this is not the kind of concerto you should be doing a lot of with metronome, and certainly not at your level of playing. You don't need, there's no rhythmic problems, but maybe just for tempo, just once play it through with a metronome and see if you can catch some places where not sections that should be slower, because of course there are those, but within a large stretch of fast stuff, just turn on a click and just to check what's actually happening. Yeah, making sure that you don't fade notes that should be sustained, after this stuff. And then the orchestra actually, boom, boom, they have a big strong note, and then you can give the feeling of crescendo, but don't completely take all of the air out of the sail. Have you ever peaked at an orchestral score?
Yes.
All right, I really get that answer. Good for you. All right. Yeah, so there are various things we can, various things we can learn from the score, right? We can learn which, you can, listen to a recording, but to actually see it helps it get in your brain a little more readily, like what instrument is playing, so that you can think about color. Obviously, if it's a piece that you're just starting to explore, you can see, okay, who has the melody where, and do you have the melody or not, and if you don't, who has it, and stuff like that. But I would say one really important thing to look at your orchestral score for is texture, in terms of thickness, how many people are playing and what dynamic do they have, so that you can see, because the piano reduction is able to do chamber music with you. Even if piano can be loud, but it's never going to be loud as the whole brass section, right? Or the whole string section. So looking to see when can I not be soft, like it's a sonata or something. And that would be a really typical spot where the entire orchestra is blasting and you did something very tasteful and nuanced, and you just have to, shout it out there. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, so this section is really interesting because it has these forzandi on these almost sort of the offbeat measures. You can make more of them, and especially because then finally we get to the last one, which does not have a forzando, and then it makes it really special and different. Can you just give me that spot? All right, hold on. You have to vibrate your forzandos. I was unfortunate, I didn't realize there were two versions of this in here, so let me look at the corrected one. Yeah, so you have no forzando, forzando, nor forzando, forzando. So you can't vibrate the no forzando and then not vibrate the forzando, okay? And spend more time on the forzando and move past the not forzando. So it's almost inside-out measures from what you would expect. I mean, it's fine to acknowledge the chord change, the harmony change, obviously. But and I want you to feel like those high notes. Just give them a little more time and do something with them. Yeah, you blew right past that one. Da, 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 da. You gave me a nice juicy G string. Da, 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 I need that E string note. You didn't even vibrate it. Okay, but now you have to vibrate it extra because it's a forzando. You have to give it a big emphasis. That's it. Now, that one's still a forzando. On that C. You do that third one. The 5/7 chord. No, on the C, on the downbeat. So now it's not the highest note. It's the downbeat note. Da 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 ya. Yeah, more forzando. Yeah, give it a zing with your left hand. Now this one. That one has no forzando, so that one has to be delicate and gentle to contrast with all the ones that came before it. Start on the 5/7 again. Yeah, okay, you have to confuse where you are. So this one. All right, so. You need your music in front of you, but yeah, so just work on that. Make sure that, when there's something so specific in the ink, you can't just ignore it. There was one other little, one wrong note, just so we don't forget. So after, and then actually, when it says to start piano, you crashed into that with a great forte, but he actually gives you a subito piano. And then a crescendo. And then right? Okay, so why don't you start from... Yeah, can you get a little bit better the forzatos? So we really poke those up bows. All the way to the end of it. Yeah, don't taper it. Don't taper. You're going. But all right, all the way to the end of that bow. So good. And then one other tiny little thing when you are playing your long G. And it's really interesting because the orchestra's peak of their hairpin is 1 bar after your open G. And he does that in the exposition and the recapitulation. So it's obviously intentional for you to peak and then them to peak a bar later. But your hairpin was so subtle, I didn't really catch when its middle arrived. So make sure that you make more of that hairpin during your long held G. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Really, really important. Now, I think it's fun that you're doing this, more like original bowing. But always when you have the da da, we don't want da 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 da, right? Da, because somehow having the backwards bowing there's advantages and disadvantages to any bowing pattern you might choose in Mendelssohn. So none is better or worse than another. They all have things that you can work with. But what you want to make sure is you don't do right. So, oh my Felix, my Felix. All right. Mrs. Vamos would always say, oh, my Rachel, my... And then I'd get very embarrassed. But luckily, Felix works because it's his name. So lighten up your down bow so it doesn't stick out, and then lean into your up bow so that it gives a more natural shape. If you were singing the music, right, you wouldn't go da 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 da. You so, in fact, have you ever sung this opening?
Sometimes to myself, it's very sad. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so doesn't hurt to from time to time touch base with that. When you're in the privacy of your own room, nobody can hear you. But just see how the line feels, and then try to use the awkwardness of our downs and ups and shifts and all of that, and recreate how the music really needs to be. All right, so from the beginning. Yeah, that was much better. That was, that felt so much nicer to hear. And there was one other little thing. Yeah, let me look at the other. Da, 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 da. Yeah. Oh yeah. So when you get to ya, da, da, obviously that G is the highest note that you're reaching for. But then da, ya, da, da, da. I'd love to have a little bit something on the F sharp as well, because I feel like the shape of the line da 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 ya, da 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 da. All right. Yeah, and then make sure, about your eighth note, that it never, especially the second time, da, 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 that eighth note down bow doesn't ever poke out. It's so great. But just a couple of tiny details. Making sure, especially because the orchestra isn't even playing when you have these eighths. And what is it? It's a stupid arpeggio. So we have to do something interesting. And if you just play the notes, like I'm noticing good violin playing, but I'm not hearing enough music. So think about just the subtlety of the inner phrasing. And within the large line of the whole two half bars, but it doesn't end up being. You see how that didn't have shape? And then these ones, make sure that you don't ever kick the starts of a bow change because it takes away from. Okay, so start right on. Da 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 da. I really want to have that little bit of direction. Yeah, so I love that you dropped down, but again, your orchestra on stage, you drop down that much, that doesn't make sense. That's great for sonatas, chamber music, not for concertos. We have to do fake dynamics sometimes. And yeah, you don't want to be one of those, I won't name names, but some people play loud, 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 loud. And that's not what I'm talking about. Not, you see what I mean? It's just too much. I invented, this is a silly thing that doesn't exist, but I invented this thing that I call mezzo fortissimo. And that's just like a clue to myself to be still like fortissimo, except only a mezzo fortissimo. So like slightly less than fortissimo, but still big, but leaving room to go to true fortissimo. And that's something that I kind of think of when I'm dropping down within the context of something loud, if that makes sense. Yeah, so start right there. Da, da, da. Yeah, you're too surfacey. Give it some core. Yeah, there you go. Keep it. Yeah, don't stop the music. Da, yeah, da, da, da. Yeah, there you go. Great. Okay. By the way, has anybody ever talked to you about your bow hand?
Not that much.
About kind of getting your fingers a little bit more flexible?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There are people have various things on their list of, after COVID, this and that and the other. For me, it's like, now I can fix people's bow hands. I'm so looking forward to that because I want to just go across the stage and like make your knuckles go lower. But something like this, with your knuckles sticking up, I feel like you're dissipating your sound. What do you work on for bow hand? Do you do subchicks, scales?
Sometimes I just do bow changes.
Okay, I could see what you're demonstrating just now. You're actually leaving it up until the last minute. I'd love to see you get it down. Just give me a long bow, string of your choice, note of your choice, whatever. Okay, let's see. This is, why don't you give me an E, because it's E minor. So when you get to here, by here your fingers should be rounded and into the bow so that you can be into the string. Yeah, so on that up bow, feel your pinky kind of pulling the stick and feel the weight of the arm sinking into the string a little bit more. You see how you're raising it at the frog? Yeah, slow motion, slow motion. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, curve, curve. Yeah, okay, so if you divide it into fourths, I would do 2 by halfway, nice round fingers. The third fourth, is still neutral, and then you don't turn the bow away to avoid crunch until the last quarter. You don't need to be turning your bow away already at the middle of the bow, because then this is your neutral zone, all right? This is where you need to be firm. Here at the tip, you need to lean in extra. Here at the frog, you need to, make sure it doesn't crunch. But yeah, do that one more time. 1, 2, 3. And think about what your mechanics are for each quarter of the bow. So flat hair by the second quarter. Yeah, wrist lower. 2, but 1, 2, even speed. Stand up, no bent knees. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Curl your pinky. Curl your pinky. It's still sticking up. And then up, yeah, don't raise your wrist till the very end. And then lower it back down. Okay, so probably scales. But then sometimes, weird things can happen with our technique, where we can play like a scale with perfect mechanics, and then we get to our repertoire and none of those mechanics are there because we haven't bridged the gap between the technique in the exercise and the application. So sometimes it helps to take like some favorite old piece that you don't have to think about the music of, whether it's, some lyrical piece you played a couple years ago, Meditation from Thais, or even a favorite old Suzuki song, or who cares? But just something that's an actual melody, and then seeing if you can think about your wrist, your fingers, and everything, because I think you're such a strong player, and some of it gets a little bit on the surface of the string because your fingers are just not letting the weight of the arm sink into the bow because they're all sticking up way too often. And it's hard because in non-COVID times, your teacher would just do this to you all lesson long for as long as it takes, and then you're all fixed. But in the absence of that, you have to think for yourself a little more, but it is entirely possible. Okay, thank you so much. Wonderful job. Now, do we have a couple moments for Q&A, or do they have to dash? Do we have a couple moments for Q&A, or do they have to run off?
They do have a concert. I would like to just say one of the very best articles I ever read about what to look for in a full score when you're playing a concerto is one that Rachel wrote. Was it for Strings magazine or something like that?
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Where it's hiding on the internet nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of interesting ideas about why you need to look at an orchestra score to be able to play a concerto. Anyway, before we do anything else, let's have a very nice hand for this great master class. So we may have a moment or two for if anyone has a really good question for Rachel.
Oh, now the pressure's on. We normally just ask for questions. We don't necessarily say they have to be really good questions.
A passable question. Okay, Katya. Heavy metal band.
Okay. I'm using this mic for the live stream, not for you guys. So basically, when I was 10 years old and I got my first little transistor radio from Santa Claus, I started scrolling up and down the dial, and I discovered all kinds of music that I had literally never heard before. And this station that came on at 10 p.m. that was playing 80s thrash, like Anthrax, Megadeth, Slayer, Pantera, that stuff, I was like, whoa. And at the time, I thought it was like kind of a release of, oddly, I mean, this sounds paradoxical, but I could like relax by listening to that music because I could turn off my brain. Not that it's stupid, brainless music, but I didn't have to, when I would listen to classical music, if it was a piece I had already played, I would be thinking, oh, how are they interpreting it? If it's a piece I hadn't played, I'd be thinking, oh, what's this piece all about? I was always analyzing classical as I was listening to it. So I enjoyed listening to classical, of course, but I couldn't ever listen to it for pure pleasure because I was always thinking. And if I wanted to just not think, I would listen to metal. But then when I was in my early 20s, I was touring full time, and I was looking for ways to introduce new audiences to classical music, and I thought, well, there's no, I mean, I love rock, I love classical. Why can't other people that love rock also show up to my symphony gigs? And, classical is awesome stuff too. So I started going on these rock radio stations, and I would play some Metallica or some Led Zeppelin or whatever, and then I would play a Paganini Caprice, and I would talk about how a lot of the great rock bands are very influenced by classical. And it was so awesome to just have people come to their first ever classical concert and really love it, and very exciting thing. And so I started playing this music on my violin, and then I was like, oh, that's why I listen to it, because it's like so classically inspired. It's actually certain subgenres of metal are some of the closest to classical among all the rock styles. It's a longer answer that I'm not going to spend time on right now. But anyways, I never thought I would play in a band, because I didn't want to, try to form a band from scratch. I didn't want to add myself on to an existing band. I don't know. I just didn't think, I also had this idea like that's not something that soloists do or something. Not like in a snobby way, but just like this is a life option that's not open to me kind of a thing. And then some friends of mine met through each other, I was basically like workshopping a new outreach program that I was doing I'd been doing some chamber music things where I would do like my string quartet versions of stuff, so it expanded from the radio stations to actually like orchestras would send me to a local bar or something a couple nights before the concerto gig, and then I would play some, Shostakovich 8 and different stuff, and also some whatever, Black Sabbath and AC/DC, and then, again, trying to get people to come to the orchestra concert. And then I started making some arrangements for actual orchestra shows. Again, not to have a cheesy crossover show, because that's not, some people do crossover great, but I don't feel like that's who I am. Like if I'm playing rock, I'm not playing rock/classical, I'm just playing rock. But it was, again, to like bait and switch, bring them into the show to hear the rock songs they know and love, and then accidentally hear the classical that they're also going to realize they love just as much. And all acoustic, no amps or anything. So I was workshopping which classical pieces to include in this mix, and I invited some of my metal friends in town, and they had actually, oddly enough, never met each other, and then they decided they were going to form a band, and it seemed like, well, that's obviously the band I should be in, and it was actually an amazing experience in a couple of different ways. Of course, it was fun to just play really, really, really loud, but to be on stage and a mosh pit forms in front of you, that's something kind of magical. But it was actually like educational in terms of the benefit to my classical playing in two distinct ways. One was the experience of being part of a songwriting collective, as opposed to in classical where there's one composer that writes all the parts. But instead, one person would have an idea for a riff, and another person would add a counter melody, and then somebody else would suggest rearranging the order of the parts, and then somebody else would add a harmony. And being part of that process with others was really interesting in terms of developing my compositional voice. And then also the idea that I was getting real-time feedback. I guess you get something of the same thing when you're busking, where people either pay attention to you or not, or tip you or not. But the fact that in classical you have to, and it's a different art form, and it should be this way because it wouldn't work otherwise, but you're performing and you might sense that the audience is with you or that the audience seems to be into it, but you don't know for sure until you get to the end of the movement and they either applaud politely or enthusiastically. And in metal, of course, it's so loud that they don't have to be quiet. So if they, if they're not like really that into it, they're going to just like stand there. But if they're really into it, they'll come closer to the stage. They'll throw the horns. They'll start headbanging more vigorously, and you know that you're reaching them. And so I actually feel like I became a better communicator on stage, because even though obviously the emotional palette of classical is far wider than that of metal, I feel like I was able to like figure out, okay, if I'm reaching the audience, what am I doing right? Or if I'm not, what can I change to do better? And then was able to bring that communication ability back to my concerto performances. So besides being fun, it actually did benefit me as a player. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Oh, and you can check us out on Spotify. The name of my band is Earthen, E-A-R-T-H-E-N, Grave, like earthen grave. Like, yeah.